The Conference USA Championship between Western Kentucky and Jacksonville State is at Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on CBS Sports Network. Dawn, the playoff implications here, really there aren't any, right? These are two teams that have 8-4 records in the season. They're not really candidates no matter what happens in the other games, but it's worth mentioning that the Hilltoppers are going for their first Conference USA title since 2016, back when Jeff Brom was their head coach. And the Gamecocks are trying to win a conference title in just their second season as an FBS program. If you notice on the desk right there, we actually don't even have a Jacksonville State helmet. I believe it's like one of 7 FBS teams that we don't have a helmet for. We should be getting all of them, hopefully, by next season, hopefully. But so we put the PFF helmet there. But yeah, it's a brand new FBS program in Jacksonville State, and now they're in the Conference USA Championship in only their second year. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, no, they've done a great job in both seasons. I believe they finished 9-4 last season as well, and made a bowl game in their first season. So I think this is an interesting matchup because they just played each other this past week, and you've got a situation with Jacksonville State's starting quarterback getting hurt in that game, and Western Kentucky needed to get that win just to get to this spot. They won the game 19-17, so now we've got a different dynamic with the game being in Jacksonville State this time, and you get a rematch factor and a backup quarterback. So it's really going to be a good matchup between two teams that really battled their way to the top of Conference USA.
There's a lot of these conference title games that have a matchup that we saw earlier in the season, but this is one where you saw it literally just last weekend. So it's interesting to see how these two teams are playing twice in 2 weeks. And you mentioned that Western Kentucky won 19-17, a game-winning 50-yard field goal with only 3 seconds left to win that one and clinch a spot in this title game. But Dawn, you have the Hilltopper offense in this game. What should we be looking out for when they have the ball?
All right, so Caden Veldkamp, big 6'6", 230-pound pocket passer for Western Kentucky. Of course, in that style, he's kind of classic, right? The big, tall pocket passer. He's got to have a clean pocket, all right? So I think it's an 88.1 passing grade in a clean pocket this season. And the thing about Jacksonville State, 88.4, 14 big-time throws, 79.5% adjusted completion rate. Really good in a clean pocket, then a 49.8 passing grade under pressure. And the question is, okay, can you get to them? And Jacksonville State, we talked about that 3-3-5 defense that Iowa State runs, that Cincinnati runs. They really structure their defense kind of the same way, where it's more about their coverage and it's more about just creating, space and time for your defensive line to work up front, even though you're only sending a 3-4 man rush a lot of times. The difference between Jacksonville State's defense and those two that I just mentioned is that while those two don't blitz hardly at all, if you remember the Iowa State previews, they run more 3-man rush than anybody else. Jacksonville State actually blitzes a lot. It's just a matter of which linebackers they're sending on any given play, but even then, they need to blitz that much because they have the 11th lowest pass rush grade in the country and the 8th lowest pass rush win rate. So if they can't find ways to disturb Veldkamp, he's going to have all day to sit back there and throw into intermediate windows like he did last week. Now, did it kind of work? Yeah, because they only gave up 19 points. But now you're playing a guy a second time. He's getting more comfortable playing against your defense. He knows he's got time in the pocket. He knows what windows he's dealing with. So if these blitzes don't get home, and Veldkamp is just sitting back there in the pocket with all his receivers, and he's got windows to throw into, as we've seen it before, right? Colorado against Iowa State. We saw it against Cincinnati as well with some other teams. It's a type of defense where if you get no pressure at all, no matter how many guys you drop into coverage, you could have an issue because you're giving the quarterback too much time.
And Caden Veldkamp's been really, really good as a passer this year. The other quarterback, Tyler Huff, has been really good as a runner this year, but he might be out of this game, Dawn, because you mentioned before how he got hurt just recently. Really, Jacksonville State's entire offense is centered around their elite ground game. They've run the ball on 62% of their plays this year. The only schools that have run the ball more often are the 3 military academies in Navy, Air Force, and Army. So they've run the ball at a very, very high rate. Like I said, the highest rate outside of the military academies. Trey Stewart, their running back, is 8th among all running backs in the country with 924 yards after contact. He's 5th in the country with 20 rushing touchdowns. And also Jacksonville State has a top 25 run blocking grade in the nation at 70.5. Clay Webb, who was an All-American for us last year, hasn't been quite as dominant this go-around, but it's still a very, very good guard for them. They still have a very good offensive line blocking for the ground game. But a big part of that ground game was Tyler Huff, the quarterback. He has 1,277 rushing yards on the season, second among all quarterbacks in college football, I believe only behind Bryson Daly from Army. But he went down against Western Kentucky last week with an injured ankle and did not return. His backup is Logan Smothers, who's played a lot, last year especially as well. He's not nearly as dynamic as a runner. He has 387 yards as a part-time starter last season. And head coach Rich Rodriguez said that Tyler Huff's status is uncertain for Friday night, so he might not be able to go. Now, Western Kentucky has had some issues defending the run all season. They're 95th in yards per attempt allowed at 5.3. They're 80th in EPA per run allowed as well. And Tyler Huff, even in that game, when he got hurt midway through the third quarter, he had 99 rushing yards midway through the third quarter on only 12 carries against Western Kentucky. So if Huff is out of this game, or even if he's hobbled with an injured ankle, the Hilltoppers could have a much easier job when only having to worry about Trey Stewart running the ball.
Yeah, and I think when they lost Huff in the third quarter of that game last week, they were at an advantage because Jacksonville State had already clinched a spot in this game, so they didn't feel the urgency to send him back out there and potentially re-injure it. So maybe there's a chance that he plays on Friday, but You're right. If he doesn't, their offense gets a little bit less dynamic, I should say, and they want to run the ball a lot. So I think it's going to be an interesting dynamic. One, just a defensive adjustment for Western Kentucky based on either guy playing, and two, if they have Huff out there, like you mentioned, is he going to be 100%? Because he rolled his ankle pretty good the other day. And again, they didn't have to throw him back in there. I'd be curious if they had to win that game, if they had to put him back in there. But we didn't need to find that out, but we will this Friday.
Yeah, like I said, it's not only about can he play, it's about he injured his ankle. And that affects, obviously, your rushing ability a lot. So that is another question to watch out for. But Dalton, who ultimately will win the Conference USA Championship?
I'm kind of making an assumption here that either Huff is not playing or he's going to be severely hobbled, and that's, like you mentioned, a big factor for a team that really wants to run the ball. On top of the fact that I do think Caden Veldkamp started to look more comfortable against this defense as that game went on, I'm going to take Western Kentucky. I still think it's going to be kind of low scoring because both of these teams have struggled to score the last few weeks. I'm going to take Western Kentucky 23-16.
Yeah, I also have Western Kentucky pulling it off. I have it 27-24. Like I said, if Tyler Huff is out, it's really hard to imagine what Jacksonville State is going to do outside of relying on Trey Stewart as a workhorse for that offense. It's like I said, they don't really throw the ball that much at all. And Logan Smothers hasn't really shown much as a passer either. So I think Western Kentucky wins its second straight matchup over Jacksonville State and take home their first Conference USA title in 8 years. Hey, thanks for watching another episode of the PFF College Football Show. Please make sure you guys subscribe to the channel.
Also, subscribe to PFF Plus at subscribe.pff.com for all of the same data and grades that we use in our show, plus fantasy tools, betting tools, and our mock draft simulator.